Hey everybody, good morning. How are you? Happy Thursday. I hope that you're doing well in your part of the world. I know that I'm fortunate to have viewers from all around the world, so I hope that you're doing well. I hope that you and your families are safe in your part of the world. But today, I'm just grateful that I get to spend some time with all of you. It's our chance to get together and look at data science and take a little bit of a unique view today. We're going to take a little bit of a unique view where we're actually going to study some data today, which is great. Actually, let me adjust my camera here. I just noticed my camera is slightly off. The framing on my camera is slightly off. I think I hit it earlier. There we go. All right. Believe it or not, I have these little lines that I guide myself with as far as where the eye lines are and everything. But anyways, as I was saying, today we have a little bit of a unique stream because we're going to continue our study of some data, particularly a research report around gold, which I think is really fun. We had a fantastic stream last week when we did this. We did this a week ago today. We did this last Thursday. Had a really good time. Really felt like one of my best streams ever, and it's because of you guys that make that stream good. You know, we had a lot of discussion back and forth, and I really think that the data is interesting because, you know, gold is a little bit of a universal item, right? You know, every culture, every country out there has some interest in gold. But really, my goal is to kind of create that meta framework so that you can take this and say, okay, yeah, that's how studies come together. That's how I can utilize research reports. That's where I can find data. Because, you know, there's a little question that my most popular inquiries on Discord, on chat, on my comments, my messages is, well, I don't know where to start. I don't have project ideas. I don't know where to get data. This is it. This is where you get data. This is where you get started on your projects, on your portfolios, on developing your skills. So I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to, well, I always look forward to spending time with you guys, but in this particular scenario where we're actually doing some research work, I think it's fun and just, you know, just a really good way for us to get together and get working together. So I can already appreciate that there's some people in my chats. Look at the lineup. Look at this. So many people already lining up in the chat. We have people across all platforms today, so this is fantastic. Really looking forward to that. So yeah, let me go acknowledge the chat, and then, you know, we'll see if we want to get started or not. If this is your first time joining us, which I know that might apply to some of you, that's great. Please feel free to just let us know where you're from. You know, if it's your first time, you want to, whatever you want to share about it, about yourself, that's great. We ask people to kind of introduce themselves before, you know, jumping into the conversation and all that. Okay. So let me look at my chat. Rahul, you're first today. Rahul says, I am the Supreme. By the way, how you doing, my man? Yes, Rahul, you are the Supreme. You were first today. Congratulations. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for asking. Yeah, I'm doing great. I got up a little early today. I went to, I took my dog to the dog park early today, you know, so guys, you know, people have been asking me to do a day in the life video, and maybe I'll do that sometime. But yeah, I mean, like, I know this is going to sound crazy, but a lot of times I start my day in the dark. I leave my house. I go to the dog park. I'm usually there by 4:30, 4:45 in the morning. But basically, like, I'm there in the dark by myself, just watching my dog run around. I mean, my day starts off pretty early. And then I always go to my Starbucks, you know, get my coffee, and then I come back here, work, do stuff for you guys, do stuff for the content. So yeah, but you know, to me that's a good way to start the day, you know. But my day is going well because I also get up early because I get excited for these streams, especially one like today, right? You know, so it's good to get up early, you know, and get everything done. So I'm doing great. Thanks for asking, Rahul. Rex says hello from a chilly New York City. Oh, is it chilly over there? Okay, cool. But you know, the falls in New York are beautiful, beautiful out there. I wish I could be out there. Maybe I'll make it out there sometime. But fall in New York is beautiful. So Glad you're doing well out there, Rex. Bisma, our good friend from Pakistan, says hello. Hey, Bisma, nice to see you. Glad you're here. Silly Caddy, you only make appearances for the classes, don't you? Yeah, but glad to see you. Hope you're doing well. I know you attended last week, so I know you know how fun it was, so hopefully we'll have some more fun this week. Hey guys, please don't spam my chat. You guys are better than that. Let's keep it professional, okay? If you type it once and it appears on your screen, I guarantee you it appears on mine. Let's keep things professional, guys. Joseph says, good morning, Dennis. Happy pre-Friday. Happy pre-Friday to you too, Joseph. I like the way you put that. Hope you're doing well too. You know, you remind me of something. I once saw like a meme online or something that said something like, Happy Thursday, or as I like to say, day 4 of the hostage situation. That's what you reminded me of. So, you know what? But I don't feel that way, you know, because I work for myself now, you know, I make my own hours, I get up when I want to, I meet with you guys, I get to spread my passion of data science, you know, all around the world. So, yes, it's pre-Friday, but for me, every day is a Friday now. So, I hope the same for you guys. But yeah, you know, it's been a good week, Joseph, so thanks for asking. Fatima, our good friend Fatima from Morocco says, hey sir, hey Fatima, how are you? Hope you're doing well. Is it Kang? Kang, I think it's your first time, so welcome to the stream. Good morning, Des. Good morning to you too. Hope you're doing well, Kang. Let us know where you're checking in from. Yassine, our good friend Yassine says, hello sir, Yassine from Tangier, Morocco. Welcome, Yassine. Hope you're doing well out there. Hope you're getting out to the beach and enjoying the beautiful parts of Tangier. Dennis, when will we I can't read today. When will Okay, that's why I can't read it, because I'm trying to read it. When will we be conducting an online together project, the one you were talking about, when we can all get together and do a project? Yeah, you know, that's a great question. Thank you so much for bringing that up, because I was thinking about that yesterday. All right, guys, so I know some of you are new. So Silly Caddy is referring to the Sunday tutorials that I do. Every Sunday I try to pick like a series or a tutorial or something that we can do as a little bit of a longer class, a little bit more of an instructional class, very similar to today. You know, today is more of us researching than it is instructional, but, you know, very similar to today. But yes, I have mentioned that I want to do a series where we are going to do an entire project end to end together. I'm going to show you how an entire project comes together. So we're going to go from like the initial meetings to the idea development, to the scrum planning, to like the quasi-technical planning, and then the actual coding of the solution. Like, I'm going to show you how we used to do the ideation with my stakeholders. I'm going to show you how we did like the scrum planning at IBM. You know, IBM taught me, I'll never work for IBM again, but they taught me a lot about like scrum planning and agile planning, right? Or, you know, how we actually carried out code at other places I've worked, right? So, yeah, so I definitely want to kind of show you guys that. But the challenge is that that's a very long series, right? Super long. I have an outline for it. I have an entire outline for it. I think it's going to be like 10 plus weeks to do that. So the challenge is that right now I have so many other ideas for other tutorials that I want to do, kind of like one-day tutorials. Like we've had 2 great ones, right? We had one on CPU versus GPU. That was great. And then last week we did Julia versus Python, and that was great. I don't think people will ever want to work with Julia again after last week. But like I have other ideas that I want to do, you know? So Silly Caddy, I haven't forgotten about it. Thank you for the reminder. I just so much good stuff, guys. So much good stuff that I want to that I really want to teach, that I'm really passionate about, right? So it's coming, Silly Caddy. I promise you'll be the first to know. I just have a lot of ideas, you know, but I'm getting there. But thank you for keeping me accountable. I appreciate that. Manoj, our good friend Manoj from Bangalore, India. Manoj, how you doing, buddy? Hope you're doing well. You're such a great, consistent supporter. See you here every day. Thank you so much for that. All right, let me skip over here. Voldemort, it's been a while. How are you? You've been gone a little bit. Maybe you also just show up for the classes, and that's cool. That's cool, you know. I like doing the daily streams, and I like taking the questions, but maybe some of you just want the classes. That's okay. Voldemort says, hello, sir. Hey, hope you're doing well, Voldemort. Welcome back. Okay, apologies. Forgot to put in my nickname. Sam here, tuning in from Bangkok. Welcome, Sam. I hope you're well. It's pretty late in Bangkok, so thank you so much for staying up with us. Glad to see you here. Actually, we've had other viewers from Bangkok, but I don't think that was you. Is today your first time? I think it's your first time. But we have had other viewers from Bangkok, so hope you're doing well out there. I think it's typhoon season out there, right? I saw some stuff on TikTok about the typhoons in Vietnam, I think. I'm assuming it's typhoon season for that area, right? Like August, September. Sirvan says, good morning, Dennis. Sirvan, good to see you, my friend. Hope you're doing well. I believe that you're in Delhi, but I hope you're doing well in your part of the world. All right, guys. So again, if you're just joining us, you feel like introducing yourself, say hello, let us know how you're doing. But otherwise, I think, you know, you guys are here for the gold data. I'm here for the gold data. So I'm ready to start if you guys want to start. But yeah, so my intent is to continue the work that we did last week, because I think last week we went about 2 hours, and I had a whole other section I wanted to get to that we just didn't get to, and I think it'll be interesting. So let's do it, right? All right. So let me do some setup here. Voldemort says, I'm good, sir. I wanted to join live every day, but I can't, so I go and watch the recorded sessions, and whenever I got a chance, I appeared in your live to motivate myself. All right, cool. Thank you so much. That sounds like a good plan. You know, guys, I gotta tell you something. Working with social media has definitely busted some of my myths, you know, like some of my own personal biases, right? So like, I know I don't watch replays of live stuff. Like, I like watching stuff when it's live, and if I didn't watch it, then I'm just done with it, right? I don't go back to it. But that's me. That's my own personal bias. I've been so surprised at how many people watch my replays, you know, after I've been live. Like, it gets a lot more views than I thought was ever possible. Like, again, it's not something that I would do, so obviously that's shading my opinion. But Voldemort, you're not alone in that. I do get a lot of people, you know, maybe like, I think, I haven't verified this in my analytics, but I think it's also just people who I'm not convenient for in time zones. I'm not convenient for most of Asia. I get that, unfortunately. So I think I get people from other time zones like that watching it. But yeah, you're not alone in watching those. A lot of people watch them. So I appreciate you doing that. And, you know, we're here to help whenever you can attend. All right, guys, so let me set up some things here. I have so many things going on my screen here. Do this. Let me get a second Google window going. Yeah, okay, that's what I want to do. And then I guess I want to go over here. So let me bring up my classroom view. Yeah. Okay. All right, so as I mentioned, this is part 2 of our gold study. Part 1 was fantastic. I think we did a lot of advancement there, but there's still a lot more we can do, right? The win from last week, if you guys remember, was that we had so much back and forth conversation, right? We had different views, different takes on the data, on the trends, and I have to start off by emphasizing to all of you that that part is so important in really all of science work, but specifically in data science. It's so important to be able to, 1, express yourself, express your view, and 2, to be able to take in other people's view, right? You should have a view, you should have an opinion, a theory, a thesis, whatever you want to call it, but don't get married to it, right? Be willing to change it. And I think we had some of that in those conversations last week. The second thing that I think was also really important coming out of last week was people were generating ideas in the chat, right? People were generating ideas and saying, hey, well, what if we were to combine interest rates? What if we were to combine this? What if we combine that? That's where data science project ideas are born, right? That's exactly how, when I mentioned to people, now and in previous content and chats, right? Questions usually lead to good hypotheses. And if you have a hypothesis, then you have a start to a project, right? If you have a hypothesis, then you're kind of on your way. You've set the foundation for the project, right? So super valuable stuff that came out of last week. Now, I know that some people were unable to join us last week. So let me run through and let me show you kind of a quick summary of where we got to last week, and then we can kind of pick up from there. So I get just a little bit frustrated when people tell me that the data isn't out there, or it's hard to find data, or because it really isn't, guys. It really isn't. So last week, I told you guys that I have an interest in gold, right? That's just my own personal interest. I'm interested in it as an investment, as an industry, the mining industry and things like that. So that's what I always say, right? Start with your interests. What interests you? What do you like? So for me, that's gold. So we can start there. And by the way, I do have to give my disclaimer again. I have worked in wealth management. I do have financial licenses. So I have worked as a financial advisor, but I am not your financial advisor. I'm just here giving my opinion, and that's it, right? I'm not trying to give any financial advice here. But we can start with Google, and we can just start with something something simple, right? So gold industry. What do we call it? Like a gold industry group, right? Or yeah, a gold industry group. Or a gold industry research group, let's call it. And there we go. Our very first couple of matches is somebody called the World Gold Council. So that's an independent research body or industry trade group for the gold industry. So that's where you want to start, right? You can start here. You can start by reading articles about the gold industry, whatever you'd like. But with a simple search, right? We now are going to this research database for the gold industry. I mean, this is exactly what we want, right? So we can look here, we can see the gold trends, ETFs, commentary on the gold markets, right? Tons of different topics, tons of different press releases. They take a global view, so there's opinions on India, opinions on China. Like this is gold. For the lack of a better word, this is a gold mine for you as a researcher, right? And all industries have trade groups like this, right? Like this is not rare to the gold industry. So I think we looked at here in the featured articles, the monthly ETF, that's probably more from an investment side. The gold market commentary, that's probably a little bit more like an opinion-based view, opinion-based research, which can be valuable, but we want to keep things a little bit more quantitative, right? And the one that really caught our eye last time, if you guys remember, was the gold demand trends, right? Because that sounds valuable, right? That sounds like the right track, right? So we start with some commentary. We see over here that there's an executive summary. There's the report itself. I point out the executive summaries because sometimes those are very valuable just to give you an idea of if that's the research you want to do. Sometimes they mention methodology in there, which is also very important. You should understand the methodology that they're using. And you kind of just go from there, right? Here we can see that they're breaking out the report into jewelry, investment, central banks, the technology behind it, the supply. And then, wait a minute, chart gallery, that sounds like something we should be interested in too, right? So again, guys, this isn't difficult, right? We're 3 minutes into our search, and we found some really valuable data if you're a gold researcher, right? But again, pick your own interest. Pick your own interest, find a trade group, find whatever, and you're going to find stuff that's similar to this, right? All industries do something similar to this. So in the highlights, we can pick up some of the data. More importantly, we can see that this is obviously very quantitative based, because they're mentioning quantitative values, they're mentioning trends, they're mentioning that they give outlooks, and then we start seeing some of these charts, right? Some of these charts are exactly kind of what we ended up working with last time, right? And this stuff can be very valuable as far as examining the charts is what's going to help lead you to ideas, questions, hypotheses. And if you have the hypotheses, then okay, well, what data do I need to research that hypothesis? What data do I need to establish my view or change my view, right? What are the statistics or data science tools or formulas that I need to apply, right? Like this is where we start to, go from reading to actually applying data science, and that's where the value comes in, right? Yeah, Leo and Rex, thanks so much for doing the hosting duties in the chat. I appreciate that. I see it over here. Thank you so much. All right. So I think that where we ended off last time was looking in the chart gallery. And again, we're going to do this really quickly because I think that, again, I'm just trying to get people caught up, right? So here's the chart that we, I hate to say this about, this is the chart we got stuck on. I shouldn't say stuck because it was great conversation, but there's a ton of charts in here, and unfortunately we only got to one, and that's okay. We had a good time, right? But here's, I want to get caught up for people, right? We started off by looking at the blue section, let's call it, of these bar charts. And we can see from the key to the chart that the blue bars are talking about jewelry manufacturers. And we noticed how there were different spikes. There was a spike in 2013. There was a significant drop in 2020, which it's not difficult to assign a reason for that. And we started having conversations about, well, the jewelry buyers, the jewelry manufacturers are a completely different market than other markets, right? Those are people that are going to buy low because to them, gold is not an investment. It's not their savings. It's a tool. It's a resource. It's a resource for their business, right? So you buy when the market's low as a hedge for future prices, right? So we found different things like that. We talked a little bit about the central banks, which is the purple section, right? There was clearly a shift in, what did we say? I think 2010? In 09. 09 is when it started to shift, right? Previously to that, central banks were net sellers. Now, ever since 2009, they've been net buyers, right? What's the cause of that? I think that's when somebody brought up interest rates. Okay, yeah. Go research that. Why was there a shift in 09? Housing crisis, maybe, right? That was, You know, '09, we were still kind of at the tail end of the housing crisis, right? You could argue that it was still the middle of the housing crisis, right? What did that have an effect? But you'd never know, right? You'd never know these things until you actually did it, right? Until you actually take the time to look at the charts, use your own critical thinking, you wouldn't know that, right? And then I think last time we also closed by briefly looking at the green section. And I think that was my own hypothesis, right? Because the green section, again, according to the key, that's bars and coins. Well, who buys gold bars? Not your average person on the street, right? A gold bar is in the multiple six figures, probably more, right? I mean, gold is doing very well this year, right? Not just anybody buys a gold bar. Aren't the central bank purchases and the gold bar purchases kind of correlated? Shouldn't they be? Right? Like, isn't that kind of like, couldn't you argue that group is one and the same? I think there's a case to be made there. Maybe there's a way for you to prove that. Maybe that's a study that should go in your portfolio, right? I mean, think about that. How powerful is that for you to walk into your next interview and say, hey, I'd like to share with you a study that I did on gold. I went out and I found this data. I follow the industry group, and they put out a quarterly report, and I found a correlation between central banks and interest rates. I did my own research. Here's the methodology I followed. Here's the article I wrote, and I'd like to submit that article to you as my writing sample. As a hiring manager, you're telling me you're ready to go on day one, right? That's super powerful. Super powerful. You know, and so these are the types of things that I'm really encouraging you guys to do, because I think it's super powerful for you to be able to demonstrate your skills, not talk about your skills, but demonstrate your skills. And also, you know, more importantly, all of you know that I'm not here to help people pass interviews. I'm here to help you guys be data professionals. So this is not just preparing you for an interview. This is preparing you for the actual work of being a data scientist, because this is what we do, right? This could be somebody's sales data for 6 different products that they offer. And you show up on day one and they say, okay, here's our data. What can you tell us? Like that's day one for a data scientist, right? Your boss is going to introduce you to the team. It's going to introduce you to the company and say, hey, by the way, if you have any data science ideas, make sure you contact Dennis and he'll try to help you. And next thing you know, you're going to have 6 meetings on your calendar of people wanting to talk to you about their data. What are you going to do then? You got to be prepared for that, right? This is how you prepare for that. Right? I mean, you guys with me on that? So I think that wraps up like the summary to where we got to last week. And I want to do some new stuff, but let me know in the chat if you have any questions, or if I lost anybody there, or you want me to review anything. This is a good time for questions. Yeah, so start filling up my chat with questions. Otherwise, I'm going to move on to some of the other charts, because there's so many great charts in here. But let me know in the chat, okay? All right, let's quickly take note that chart 5 talks about prices and economic growth weighed on because of Chinese demand, specifically around Chinese gold jewelry consumption. That sticks out to me. Why? What are the drivers behind that? Okay, so let's put a pin in that. Put that in the back of our minds. We're gonna come back to that. All right. So looking more at these charts, I want to focus on chart 7 and 9 today. And I'm choosing 7 and 9. And look, let me, how do I put this? There are going to be times where you have to apply your own domain knowledge to say, hey, what's the next thing I want to look at, right? Where do I, as an individual, want to take my research, right? This is kind of where you have to kind of develop a nose, as they say, for the industry or for the data. So this is me saying, well, wait a minute. We did a lot of work last week around the types of markets for gold, right? The jewelry manufacturers, the central banks, the investors. But what about the globality of gold, right? Because one of the reasons why I chose the gold data is not just because I like it, but also because it has global appeal, right? I mean, every central bank holds gold. Everybody around the world knows what gold is and values it and loves gold jewelry, right? Generally speaking, right? In most cultures, gold jewelry is very respected. So that's why I chose it. But we didn't really look at that last week, right? We kind of completely took the globality out of it, right? The international nature of gold. So that's why charts 7 and 9 are sticking out at me, because they have some global data, right? So now we can take a look at this, which is a very similar chart to what we saw before. Maybe not as deep, right? Because this only goes back to 2018. So definitely not as deep data as we would have seen in the other ones, right? But let's go ahead and start with North America. So North America here is the blue bars here, and once again we see a spike. We see a spike in Q2 of 2020, right? And it's been a little bit dodgy since then, right? I mean, the trend, there really is no discernible trend, maybe a net downward trend since 2020. Prior to that, it was kind of the same, right? A little bit dodgy. So what do you guys think? Give me some feedback. Give me your assessment of the North American market. Now, keep in mind here, one of the things we do have to point out, this isn't physical gold. This is ETFs. So ETFs are a stock for a commodity that, well, it's an investment in a commodity that trades just like a stock. Right? So, in other words, this isn't people rushing out to buy gold coins. This is people moving money in the stock market into gold, into like what can be referred to as a digital gold or a virtual gold, right? So, for example, the World Gold Council, they have their own gold ETF known as GLD. There's others, right? Like Goldman Sachs has their own one. I can't remember who manages it, but there's IAU is another one, right? But this is people moving their digital money, or their gold, their savings, their stock portfolios into gold, into digital gold. So what do you guys think? What do you guys see in terms of the North American market? Let me know what you think in the chat. I'll give you guys a minute there. What do you guys think? Anything jumping out at you? Satyam, welcome, welcome. No need to worry about being late. It's okay. So Satyam, right now, the question in front of the chat is, do you see any trends or anything that's jumping out at you based on the data we're seeing for North America? So Leo says North America got positive about investing in gold in 2020 with the spike there. Yeah. Yeah, that's a reasonable observation. Anybody else? Fatima says maybe turn to gold as a safe haven asset during times of economic instability. Yep, that's a reasonable observation. Yeah. Anybody else? Give you guys another few seconds here. Don't be shy about participating, guys. We're just making observations, right? Last call, guys. So I like the observations that Leo and Fatima made. Yassine says, I think that people were going back to safe assets as the pandemic impacted economic status. Okay. Yep. Yep. Yeah. So I'm on board with those observations, right? I think they're all reasonable, right? Fatima says lower rates reduce the opportunity cost of holding gold, which doesn't yield interest, making it more attractive to investors. Lower rates reduce the opportunity cost of holding gold, which doesn't yield interest, making it more attractive to investors. We'd have to show that there were lower rates at that time, though, right? I'm not sure if that was the case or not. We'd have to go back and look at that. But look, I think everybody's made reasonable observations, right? But let me have you guys think about this, right? Because I think this is also super important in your research. And I was taught this when I took a writing course many, many years ago. I was in high school. When I was in high school, I during my last 2 years in high school, I also took classes at a local community college to help my advancement. And I took a writing course. And I remember it was a fantastic writing course. I should have thought it was terrible because it was on a Saturday. It was like from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. It was like 3 hours on my Saturday morning, and I'm like 16 years old with a bunch of older people in this class, right? But I loved it. It was a great class. The teacher was great. And it was a class on persuasive writing. And it talked about how any good writer always sees the counterpoints to their points, right? And I think that applies to research and it applies to data science, right? So I'm on board with 2020 and this spike, right? But what about here? What about here? What about here? There were spikes then too, right? What about this? Why was there a spike in 2022? And then generally speaking, the stock market and gold has done very, very well since the pandemic, right? I mean, if you look at the stocks and the gold growth since 2020, since the pandemic, it's been like a rocket, right? It's been incredible. So why would there have been this spike in 2022? Again, this is kind of where you have to apply a little bit of your own local knowledge, right? Your own interests, your own hypothesis that you're willing to put out there. So to me, I would say, well, look, I know that most of you around the world aren't going to realize this, but in the US, there has been an increase of people retiring because since the pandemic, their retirement portfolio, their retirement assets have done so well that some people have said, hey, this is it. Like, I'm of the appropriate age. My stock portfolio has done well. I have some money saved up. I'm retiring. And that there's been an increase in people saying that. But again, that's me applying my own local knowledge, my own research, right? So maybe I would do a paper or an article around, what about here, 2022? Maybe 2022 was a big year for retirements. And people wanted to move some of their money into gold, right? So as Fatima says, maybe turn to gold as a safe haven asset during times of economic instability. Well, yeah, but couldn't they also move it during times of retirement? Maybe, right? I'm retired. I want things to be a little bit more stable in my portfolio, right? Because now I have to live off this money. Maybe more people got into gold to kind of, flatten out their portfolio and retire. Right? Maybe that explains that spike. And I would say that maybe some of these, the negative spikes like these, have been caused by people saying, okay, well, the pandemic is over. I'm going to go back to stocks. And if you would have bought Nvidia back then, right, you'd be doing really well right now, right? Or something like that. So, maybe there's a little bit of an ebb and flow here to economic times or to retirement times. Right? Because I think you could write a paper on that, right? Why did this spike happen? And can you tie it back to retirements? That's your hypothesis, right? That the gold market in 2022 was supported by an increase in retirements. That doesn't sound like a bad hypothesis to me. Now go and prove it, right? So yeah, I think we're making very reasonable statements, but you gotta have an explanation for these spikes. Because what about this one here? That's Q3 of 2019. That's like what, at least 4 months before the pandemic, right? Why did that one happen? So you'd have to be prepared with those counterpoints if you want to make the same points that we just made in the chat, right? Like you'd have to be prepared for that. All right, so let's look at Asia because there's a lot of mentions of China in this report, right? So let me put Asia over here so you can see the previous items earlier. Yassine says, I think what can help in coming up with hypothesis is delving deeper into the data, like look at buyers by new categories, like by region and by age. Okay, cool. I'm on board with that. We might just get to that. That's part of what I want to do. But let's look at another region, right? Let's look at Asia. What do you guys see for Asia? Give me your observations on Asia here. So we're looking at the pink boxes. What do you guys think? Yassine says, I'm going to say that many times it goes against the trend. Okay. Okay. Anybody else? So I'm not surprised that there's not a lot of answers. Maybe some of you are catching on to this, or maybe you just can't express it. But remember that in this chart, the size of the box speaks to the magnitude, right? Which means that all the boxes are kind of relative to each other, right? So yeah, Voldemort says in 2024 they are having highest numbers in comparison to others. Yeah, Voldemort. That's exactly where I'm going with this. But if we look at these boxes, right, and remember that they're all relative to each other, not necessarily by where they are on the chart, just relative to each other, right? So even though this pink box, I can't even hide. There it is. This pink box is way down here. It's only minus 4.74. Just like this one down here is only minus 11.49, even though it's down below, right? So my assessment on this is, where's the variance? Like all the boxes, again, relative to each other, are basically the same. Not a lot of variance in that market, right? Now, Voldemort's right, 2024, right? For some reason in Q2 2024, there was a spike. But generally speaking, looking at everything else, where's the variance? And, you know, if you think about your statistics courses or other things you've taken, variance makes for good studies, right? Not that you can't study low variance data, but it helps, right? So that's another type of observation you should be making. Not all data is good data, right? But I mean, like for me, that's kind of like it's a shoulder shrug for me, right? Like where's the variance? Like what am I going to study? Like look at these three right here. I mean, they're basically identical. The three values in like 2019, right? Like where's the variance? Like, what does ANOVA stand for? ANOVA stands for analysis of variance. Well, are you going to analyze anything if there's no variance? Maybe, maybe not, right? You could do a meta study. Like, why is there no variance? Is it a data issue? It could be, right? Like you'd have to take like a step back, right? Like, to me, like that would be my first question. You know, Voldemort's observation is correct, but like, is that just better data? Maybe, right? That's possible in some markets that you're just not getting quality data out of that market. Or, you know, they're kind of lumping Asia into one region here. Well, you know, there's a lot of countries in Asia, right? Maybe you went from 5 countries reporting to 12 countries reporting. Would that affect this data? Yeah, absolutely. So maybe this is like a data quality issue or data availability issue. Maybe, right? So that kind of takes your study or your view in another direction. Or this might be a pass. right? Where's the variance? If there's no variance to study, yeah, okay, I guess we could do something, but that wouldn't be the world's most exciting study, right? So this might actually be a pass for me. If somebody said, hey, do you want to do work on this? I might, it's a shoulder shrug. So let me know what you guys think about that, because that's a different view, right? Not all data makes for good studies, right? And having the ability to determine that, pretty valuable. It's pretty valuable for you to be able to go back to your stakeholders and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to need a little bit more from you. Or, hey, I want to be honest with you. I can do something for you, but it's not going to be a great study. Don't be expecting, some groundbreaking stuff here. It's good, Maybe we can put our efforts behind something else. Let me work with you to find other data. Super valuable skill to have. But that's what my eye is telling me here. And again, maybe some of you weren't giving answers because, there's really not a whole lot to say here, right? I mean, just not a lot of variance. All right. So I think we've looked at this chart. And we've looked at a couple charts. So I think I've given you guys a flavor for how we should study some of these charts, how I take a look at them, how I apply my eye to these charts. So I would encourage you again, my goal here is not to have you look at gold. My goal here is to have you guys look at your own interests and take this as a framework to say, hey, let me apply some of those same things and maybe I can find my own thing. Okay? So we know that this study has a lot more than just charts, right? The other thing that's catching my eye is if we go back, right, because this is the chart gallery, but if we go back to the previous page, there were these other things. And ding, 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 the magic letters XLSX or CSV, right? You should be all over that, right? When you see those letters, your mouth should start salivating, right? Because this is what I tell you guys, that a lot of these reports make their raw data available. That is super valuable to all of you, right? Or in some cases, as I mentioned, if it's a government funded study, they're required to put their data out there because the people own the data, right? This is not a publicly funded study, right? This is the World Gold Council is a private industry trade group, right? But they make their raw data available, right? We're data scientists. That's really valuable to us, right? So let's look. Let's take a look. I'm excited. You should always be excited when you see raw data, right? All right. So I happen to have already downloaded this. So let me bring that up. And for those of you guys that aren't familiar with it, we're actually going to be opening this up on my Mac. I don't have Excel on my Mac. I have what is this called? Numbers or pages? I don't even know what it's called. Numbers. It's called Numbers. But this is our data. Let me put this to the side. And yeah, this looks great, right? So right off the bat, what's catching my eye here is the country data, right? That seems really good to me. And I say that because I think it was Yassine or Leo that had brought up looking at countries, right? Yeah, I think that's on the right track. We should be looking at that, right? So we're going to take a quick look. It looks like it's going to give us different worksheets. It's going to give us gold balances, demand and supply. It's going to give us jewelry demand by country. That sounds promising, right? Yes, who was it that said that about the countries? I want to make sure I give the... Okay, Yassine mentioned by buyers by region and age. Yeah, okay, so it was Yassine. Yeah, so I think Yassine's on the right track there, right? And hey, this sounds like the right track. jewelry by demand in tons and values, jewelry demand by country, bar demand by country. So now we can combine that first chart we were looking at, which had like the general categories of jewelry manufacturers, central banks, and all that, and start looking at it by country, right? Consumer demand by country. That sounds really promising too, right? So I'm excited. This sounds pretty good, right? So yeah, so it looks like these worksheets correspond to these tabs, right? So really quickly, we want to look at the disclaimers because we want to make sure that we're understanding the confines of this data, because if we do depend on this data, we should carry some of those disclaimers forward in our own reporting, right? And realize what the limitations are. So that's super important. And then we want to take a look at the executive summary. But a lot of these executive summary items we kind of got already from the charts, right? You know, we already got like a sense for the data, right? Developing that sense, that initial nose for the data, really important. A snapshot is going to tell us that, what are we looking at here? Okay, it's telling us by the individual groups that we had earlier. So again, central banks, jewelry, so on. Leo says, don't we have that already by region? What are we looking for by doing that? No, Leo, we don't. We have it by region, but not by country, right? And I think that was the spirit of Yassine's statement, that we also want to break it down by country. And also, we haven't looked at consumer data, right? We've looked at either metadata or jewelry manufacturers and central banks, but we haven't looked at the consumer level, right? So Leo, you're bringing up a good point here. When you're doing these studies and when you're doing this type of analysis, it's very important that you keep clear on the different segments that you're looking at, right? Data is all about segmentation, right? So you got to make sure you keep it in your mind to always say, okay, well, wait a minute, hold on. What segment did I look at? What is the definition of that segment, right? And that kind of comes back to the previous one where we talked briefly about the bars. Well, okay, I understand that they broke bars out of a segment, but who's the buyer for that? Like, who is the bars segment for? Not for your average person on the street, right? So keeping that segmentation super interesting, right? Or, excuse me, super important. Like, remember earlier I pointed out, hey, this chart title about China is catching my eye. Okay, great, but we haven't looked at China. We looked at Asia, right? Asia is not China. Asia is much more than that, right? Applying local knowledge, I know that Thailand is a huge consumer of gold, especially at the consumer level. So you can't say that we've looked at China data, we've looked at Asia data, right? So yeah, you're bringing up a good point, Leah, but I encourage all of you to always keep that segmentation clear. Because otherwise, you kind of end up tripping over your own analysis, right? And then, and more importantly, you kind of open yourself up to somebody poking holes in your analysis, right? You're going to have guys like me saying, oh, wait a minute, no, you mix this with this, and that doesn't go together. You had a logic flaw here, right? And I've done that to my summer interns, by the way, to the bad interns. But you got to be careful with that. You got to be careful that you segment it out. Okay, so keep that in mind whenever you work on anything, really. Okay, so now we're looking at gold balances, and this is the demand side, right? The supply and demand side for different types of gold. So for jewelry inventory, for technology uses, for coins, for bars, right? Okay, so again, to Leo's point here, we didn't look at coins. We looked at bars and coins. But now here we can have a breakout for the coins. We can have a breakout specially for the bars, right? So this is why you want to look at the raw data, because the reports, the charts, they tend to have like the compressed data. Or if you want to think about it, they have like the group buy, right? The SQL group buy. Well, you don't want the group buy if you're doing a new study or you want to build on their data. You want the data as raw as possible, right? And this is where you get that, right? Here we're going to talk about our jewelry demand, and now we have it broken out by country. So we have the Middle Eastern countries, China and its territories, rest of Asia. So I mentioned Thailand. I'm not surprised to see Thailand here. I know we have some viewers from Pakistan, so we have Pakistan in here. I'm assuming India. Yep, India is here. So this is all valuable stuff, guys. Valuable stuff. And also on the consumer side, right? We've talked a lot about central banks and all that, but we haven't talked about consumer. What can consumer tell us? That's interesting too, I think, right? So this is all great, right? All right. So what's next, guys? We have raw data. Give me a 1 if you want to go into modeling. You want to create a model right now. Or give me a 2 if you want to do some exploratory data analysis. What's next in our process? Give me a 1 or a 2. Give me a 1 for modeling, a 2 for exploratory data analysis. What do you guys think? All right, we're getting some votes coming in already. All right. All right, good. Good. Lots of votes. Lots of votes. Last call for votes. All right. Yeah, wonderful, guys. Wonderful. If anybody was going to vote 1, I was going to fire them, by the way. Always, 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 your second step is exploratory data analysis. Always, okay? Lots of teams go wrong right here. But we have the raw data. Let's go for it. No, you don't know anything about the data yet, right? You haven't done your EDA phase yet. So you really don't know a thing about it. Right? So super important to follow the methodology here. All right? So that's what we're going to do next. We're going to close this out because I want to use this exact same file. And we are going to say hello once again to our brand new employee, ChatGPT, right? Because we are data scientists, but we know that we want to be prepared for the future. And being prepared for the future is using AI, right? So yes, of course, we could write code for EDA and all that stuff. But that's not the future, right? That's dinosaur land. So we're going to use ChatGPT, being very specific in our prompt. And let me know if you need me to zoom anything with it, okay? All right, so I'm going to take that exact same data set and I'm going to attach it to our prompt here. And now we wait. Aditya says 90% of the part is understanding the data. No, 90% of the part is obtaining the data to begin with. Oh yeah, getting data within the organization is not always easy. All right, so our good employee ChatGPT is smart enough to know that there's multiple sheets, and I'm gonna go ahead and say that I wanted to do EDA on the consumer side, on the consumer part, consumer sheet, and let's start with India. Let's see where India ends up on the sheet. Okay. So we're going to be specific in what we want, right? The consumer sheet for India. It's telling us what it wants to do, and it's going to go ahead and do it. I love that it's smart enough to know that about the headers and everything else. All right, it's running into a couple of errors and it's fixing itself, which is obviously wonderful. Okay, it looks like I had to fix some of the headers and names. Trend analysis, summary statistics. That sounds great, right? That's exactly what we'd be doing in EDA. Abdul says, "Glad I could chat for the first time." Abdul, a big fan from Saudi. Wonderful, welcome, Abdul. Nice to see you here. You picked the right stream to come and join. I love doing these instructional streams, especially during the week. Okay, it's telling us that it's done. Again, let me start with a trend analysis over the years, okay? Show yearly demands, trends, and charts. Analyze quarterly demand changes for India. Let's ask for a chart. Let's ask for a visualization. Okay. What do you guys think? Give me your analysis here. By the way, guys, we got to a chart after what? A minute and a half of processing? That's pretty cool. If that doesn't excite you, I don't know what will. What do you guys think? Now remember, this is where I'm asking you guys to tie everything together, right? Think about everything we've talked about. Anything jumping out at you? In 2016, there was demonetization, so that's why. Okay. All right, cool. I like that local knowledge about 2016. Okay. Thank you for that. Lack of purchasing power during the pandemic. Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Earlier we talked about gold being a safe asset, right? Yeah, Aditya, I love that observation also. I love that the macro observation you're making. Look at the overall demand, guys. I mean, this is 2010 that this goes back to. The overall demand is like terrible, right? Like an obvious downward trend for the last 14 years. So yeah, Aditya, I love that observation. Yassine says the demand was already decreasing, but after the great fall in 2020, it started going up. Something happened there. Okay, so let's talk about that, because earlier I think it was Fatima that mentioned about people wanting to go into safe assets, right? Which was a valid observation on other charts. Did people run to gold or run away from gold in 2020? Right? I mean, to me, parts of this chart kind of go against what we've seen on other charts, right? Kinda? Right? I mean, you could say that it was not seen as a safe asset in 2020, right? People ran away from gold in 2020. Maybe they went to cash, right? Or I don't know what other popular investment products there are in India, but where did all this money go? People ran away from gold, not towards it, right? They didn't see it as a safe asset. So that kind of goes against some of our earlier observations, right? Why? Like, I'd want to know that, right? Like, there's a study to be done there. Ran away, but that's the consumer behavior. Can we check ETFs? Leo, you just came up with a study, my friend. That's a study. Where did that money go? Leo's hypothesizing that it went to ETFs. Leo, that's a study. Do that and write an article on it. That's a valid study. Aditya says they went to a mutual fund. Okay, Aditya, okay, and Voldemort says after 28 people start investing in mutual funds. Okay, cool. That's another study. Right? Is that where that money went? Or did people go to cash? I'm hypothesizing that people went to cash, right? And I don't have any special knowledge. I'm just saying that's like the counterpoint to your study, right? Or another possible part to your study, right? But yeah, I mean, you guys have a valid study there, right? What was the effect of mutual funds on the Indian gold market? Like, that's a valid question that serves as a basis for a study, right? Abdul says, I agree, it should be the opposite, high demand, not the other way. Yeah, Abdul. Yeah, absolutely. But see, I hope you guys, all of you are seeing that when you see those contradictions, when you see those reversals, those are great studies, right? Like these are studies you should be walking into your next job, your next interview with. And saying, hey, you know, I saw this reversal, kind of goes against human nature. So it got me curious. Here's my study. And hey, look, I proved that it was the mutual funds that got the money, or people went to cash, or people went to ETFs, right? Like this is where those studies happen, guys. So I mean, I just hope you're excited about this, because you guys just came up with like 3-4 different studies right now, right? Like, this is great. Like, this is how they happen. Yassine says maybe people were selling looking for liquidity to cover up for losing the ones they had for jobs that not because Yassine, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying they went to cash, right? Because you're right. Maybe they had more expenses. Maybe people lost their jobs. You know, I know that in places like India and other developing countries, people work non-traditional jobs. You know, maybe you worked in the street, you know, like a street stall or something, that now you couldn't work, right? So you had to go to cash. You didn't have other inflows. So maybe you cashed in your gold. You sold your gold jewelry, right? But yeah, Yassine, I could see that. I could see where people said, hey, I just need the cash for any number of reasons, and I'm gonna sell my gold. So yeah, I could see that, Yassine. But again, that's the counterpoint you'd want to introduce, right? And say, yeah, some went to mutual funds, but some just went to cash, or some went to, you know, Abdul is predicting Bitcoin. Maybe it went to Bitcoin. That's another possibility. Yeah, absolutely. What influenced the consumer behavior in 2020 in the gold market? Yeah, Leo. Sure. But you know, I think another, you know, correlated to that, Leo, is this is just India. What happened in other countries? Or maybe you could segment it out. Here's what happened in developing countries, but here's what happened in first world countries or second world countries, right? Maybe there's a difference there too, right? But yeah, but I'm just excited, you know, because like you guys are like coming up with all these studies, right? In my city, people still want to buy gold for the future, especially in my house. Hey, listen, if you had bought gold even just a year ago, you'd be doing very, very well right now. I mean, have you guys seen the charts for gold? So, like I said, I'm not acting as your financial advisor, right? But you know, like I said, gold is one of my hobbies. I like gold. But yeah, guys, I mean, you guys are coming up with great studies and with great counterpoints, which is very important in a balanced study. Because if you can have a study, show your counterpoint, and then defeat your counterpoint, that gives you a very strong paper, right? That's a very persuasive paper, right? Yeah, Leo says right now gold is reaching its highest. Why? Another study. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If you guys don't know, gold is at its highest it's ever been, like ever in the history of mankind, right? And it keeps on breaking the record every single day for like the past At least the past 3 weeks, maybe the last month. But again, we're getting off topic here because gold is my interest, and I'm not trying to push it on you. But use this framework, guys, or other things that you're interested in, right? I mean, that's really the value that I'm trying to give all of you in this tutorial. Okay? All right, so this is charts. Let's do something else. Descriptive statistics, super important, right? Leo says could be wars, recession. Yeah, absolutely. So that's where you'd have to start bringing in other data, Leo, right? Like interest rates, recessions, consumer outlook, right? You'd have to start looking at those correlations and relationships. All right. So here's our descriptive statistics. What do you guys think? Anything jumping out at anybody? Leo says also we're conducting an inference study, right? Yeah, great question, Leo. I wouldn't say that this is a study. We are definitely creating inferences that we want to carry forward into a study and prove in some sort of quantitative way. But I would consider what we're doing now more just like explorations, and the inferences we're making are theories we want to test, right? Because you haven't really made any valid inferences until you put some like data behind it or some work behind it. So I hate to sound like I'm being very pedantic in the words, but we are making inferences to create studies, but this in itself is not an inferential study. Abdul says, I just found out that India leads in crypto adoption for second straight year. Okay, cool. Cool, maybe it's going to crypto. All right, but so we got some descriptive statistics up on the screen. Anybody notice anything? Okay. Yassine says, I think there's skewness. Okay, Yassine. So Yassine, I'm gonna put you to task a little bit. What makes you say that? I'd love to hear your analysis for that. Voldemort also says maybe skewness. All right, guys, give it to me. What makes you say that? And Leo, here we are making a few more inferences, right? Because to say that there's skewness is a little bit of an inferential result, right? But yeah, let me hear it, guys. What's your rationale for that? And if anybody else wants to give other observations, you're welcome to. But right now we have two people saying that there's skewness. I want to hear why. Okay. Voldemort says median is less than the mean. Yassine says a 25th percentile is very close to the average. Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Anybody? You don't have to make observations on the skewness. You can make any observation you want. I'm going to make a quick calculation on my end. All right, anybody else with any observations? All right, so let's put this to the test, guys. Let's participate in the chat here. Give me a 1 if you think that Voldemort and Yassine are correct, that there is skewness. Give me a 0 if you don't think there's skewness. So are you team skew or team no skew? A 1 for skewness, a 0 for no skewness. All right, so Steel, AWSM, welcome. I think it's your first time. Steel does see some skewness. Anybody else? Give me some votes here. 1 if you agree with the skewness, 0 if you don't. Anybody else? Just give me a vote, guys. 0 if you don't see the skewness, and 1 if you do. Steel says, it's my first time here. Found out about your content and following you recently on IG. Awesome stuff. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you. All right, Manoj sees the skewness. Sam also sees it. Last call for votes, guys. All right, Aditya sees it. All right, so really appreciate the observations. And first of all, I love that you guys are looking at that, because that's one of the first things I also look for, right? So just to keep this fun, I'm going to play the other side. And I'm going to say no skew. I'm not sure. I'm not on board with the skew. I'm a 0 vote. But I love that you guys, put out your opinion and you put the rationale. And me asking you to ask for your rationale, that's pretty standard, right? Guys like me, the chief data scientist, is going to come to you and say, okay, why? Tell me why, right? And then I'm going to give you my rationale too, right? So who was it? Okay, so Voldemort is on the right track by looking at the median versus the mean. I always do that too. Right, your eye should immediately be drawn to the median and mean, right? Like if you've taken some sort of statistics, you understand why, right? So I love Voldemort's rationale there, but my question is that enough of a difference? 785 right? Which for those of you who can't see, I'm drawing it right here, right? I'm drawing the 785 from the 800. Is that enough of a difference to create a skew? I'm not feeling that. I'm not on board with that. And by the way, when I say this, when I challenge you, all of you like this, I'm open to being wrong, right? I'm open to being wrong. A good data scientist is always open to new views. I'm just sharing my rationale, right? But I'm not feeling that. You're talking a difference of 15. I'm not feeling that also because I'm looking at the range, right? 446 to 1001. What is that? A range of 550? So what's that proportion? 15 over 550? That's not a big proportion, right? What is that? 3% deviation? Not feeling that. So that gives me team no skew, right? Here's another one that is telling me that there's probably not a skew. I don't know if you guys know this, but there's an old trick, and I don't read about this online very often, so I think I'm giving you guys valuable advice here. Write this down. An old professor gave me this advice, and this little thing has saved me plenty of times. Okay, did you know that there is a shortcut for finding a standard deviation? Anybody tell you that? You're not going to read about this. You write this down. There is a shortcut for finding standard deviation. It's your range divided by 4. Your min and your max, right? Your max minus your min divided by 4 is a shortcut to find standard deviation. I think it assumes that the data is evenly distributed, right? Or normally distributed. But that's a shortcut to finding standard deviation, right? So that's the calculation I did right now when I told you guys I was doing a calculation. So 550 divided by 4 is 137, which is pretty darn close to the standard deviation that these descriptive statistics are giving us. So that's my second rationale for why I don't think this is skewed. To me, that feels close enough to be normally distributed. But I'm telling you guys, you're not going to read that anywhere else. Write that down. Your range divided by 4 is a shortcut to finding standard deviation. And it's pretty darn close in this situation. Again, that's a variance of 7 or 8. It's close enough, right? For this range. So that, again, that's my second rationale for no skew. Now, the problem to everything I just said is the observation by Yassine, because he's right? The 25th percentile is pretty close to the mean. So that definitely smells of skewness. So that is a pretty good counterpoint to what I'm saying, right? That does indeed indicate skewness. So yeah, I mean that is something that kind of holds me back, and that's why I'm open to being wrong. But I have 2 pieces of rationale for why I don't think this is skewed. So Abdul, I hope that answers your question. But yeah, I think Voldemort and Yassine both presented pretty good rationales, and then I'm presenting my own rationale. Steele says, I would say depends on the amount of data. The bigger the data, the less likely this can be detected, comparing mean and median. Yeah, that's 100% right. The number of data points here is going to affect that. You're absolutely right. And I think we're dealing with 14. So yeah, maybe that's not enough. Yeah. Steele is making another good argument. So let's find out, right? I'm pretty sure we can ask it to chart this, right? What about the fact that from median to the 75th percentile is a big difference compared to between the 25th to the median? Yeah, Yassine, sure, yeah. I mean, I agree. Like I said, I'm open to being wrong. You know, in many ways, I'm just playing counterpoint here, right? But I'm just giving my rationale, right? And, you know, maybe your rationale is correct. We're about to find out. A data scientist is always open to being wrong. So let's see what it gives us. I should have been more specific and asked it to also include the median, you know, the median lines and all that. Okay, it did show it. Okay. I'm gonna put this question in, and then we'll look at the chart while it's thinking. So to Steele's point, this is probably not enough data to really show, you know, a great distribution, right? Or a great curve. But obviously we have a fat tail over here, right? And we have a weird gap here. But what do you guys think of this? You can see that the mean and median are really not very far apart here. And we have a clear center for our data, right? What do you guys think of the chart? So let's talk this chart out before we see what ChatGPT tells us about skewness. Looks like I can do this. Okay. What do you guys think? I think the 2020 data point might be an outlier and could have skewed the data. Yeah, sure. Yeah, and this is 2020, I assume. Oh, there it is. Yeah, so the mean is lower than the median, which often indicates left skewness. The minimum value is much further from the median, suggesting a left skew. Overall, it seems the distribution is left skewed. Okay. Negatively skewed, left skew. Tail on the left side is longer than the right side. Okay. So Yassine, your instincts and your read on the data was correct. Anybody else want to make observations on the chart? Does anybody want to take a guess on what this tells us when we go to prepare our data? Because now we know that there's skewed data, right? Do we want to handle that in some way when we go into a more formal data preparation phase? Remember, EDA is about educating ourselves, right? But we should also be looking ahead to like, okay, well, what are we going to do about this, right? So what do you guys think? Nobody? We got to make the exercise mean something though, right? We should be using this to look ahead, right? If we know it's skewed data, then what are we going to do about it, right? Do we log transform it? Maybe. Do we remove the outlier? Maybe. Yeah. Yeah, I think Voldemort, you're on the right track there, right? You have to account for that outlier in some way, right? Remove it, maybe, or maybe normalize your data, maybe, right? But yeah, I mean, these are the types of things that, we think about EDA as like, oh, let's do the charts, let's do the graphs, let's look at the statistics. But okay, well, how are you going to build on that? What's next? Right? What are you going to do? Yassine says, well, first we need to know the reason for the skewness and then tackle it depending on the problem. Yeah, but that's what I'm asking, Yassine. What are you going to do to tackle it, right? Aditya says, is 0.03 skewness acceptable? Maybe not. You guys tell me. There's not always a clear answer to that because it could also just depend on, like the use case that you're doing, right? That's not always a yes or no question. So it depends. It depends on what you're trying to do, right? But this is much short data and it is not good, so we may standardize. Okay. How about the method of turning the outlier to the edge of the 75% and 25% for either side of the outliers? Yeah. That's another valid approach. Yeah. Voldemort does bring up a good point, right? That there's not a lot of data points to work with anyways, right? So, got to proceed with caution there. Or, maybe this serves better as as like an auxiliary data set or like an aid, but maybe this isn't a great modeling data set, right? Is 14 samples enough? Maybe not. Abdul says, can we consider that as missing data? Yeah, you can, but now you're down to 13 data points, right? That's probably not a net positive thing. I like Steele's answer, just trying to, normalize it a little bit, in that range, right? But yeah, you could drop it in missing data or whatever, but now your available data has dropped, right? 1 of 14 is what, 6%? Something like that? Aditya says, let's remove the 2020 data point and recalculate the statistics. Yeah, we could do that, but that's not our only outlier, right? You still have this other 1,000 outlier, right? I mean, that one's kind of an outlier-ish, right? You got this big fat tail over there, right? So like what then, right? Actually, you kind of have two fat tails, right? In a way. Yeah, so look, again, the value is not in the gold data. The value is in the thinking, in the processing, right? So I'm glad that all of you are on the right track in the sense of what you're going to do about it. But I do want to encourage all of you to keep that in mind, that the EDA has to mean something. You got these answers, now what are you going to do about it? Right? So you guys are on the right track there. Steele says, wouldn't removing the outlier on tiny amounts of data actually make the data lose its meaning? Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I think there's a significant risk in doing that. Sure. It's not a lot of data points, right? And it may not be enough data points where you would have to say, okay, you know what? This is a nice data set to look at. Maybe we can use it to, feed other stuff, but there's not a lot to look at here. Right? Or this is also the times where you have to go back to your stakeholder and say, hey, you gave me yearly data, but can you give me quarterly data instead? That kind of smooths things out too, right? Not just for more data points, but more in the data itself. Because we know that 2020 was bad, but really it was only bad the first part of the year, the first 2 quarters, right? After that, there was a little bit more of a, like the economics of the pandemic kind of settled down, right? So not only have you, quadrupled your data points, now you've kind of smoothed it out. So yeah, so that's another thing, right? You might have to go back and say, well, can you just give me more data, right? So again, the purpose here is not to teach us gold data. The purpose is to teach you the framework, right? Steele says, yeah, requesting quarterly data would be nice. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you have to do that, right? I mean, that is a really valuable skill for you as a data scientist, to know that there's just not enough there. There's not enough there. So why are you investing the time? Why are you keeping your juniors late to work on, to kind of shave the same piece of wood, right? Don't do that. Go back to your stakeholders and get more data. Find another way, right? Find the way around. Clarify and ask, right? Well, why didn't you give me quarterly data? Maybe they don't collect it on a quarterly basis. Or maybe the DBA was just too lazy to pull it, right? So yeah, these are the times where maybe this data might be too summarized. You need it a little bit more. Maybe they have monthly data. How great would monthly data be in this scenario, right? Now you've really smoothed things out that way. Excuse me. So think about that, guys, right? Because again, the whole purpose is not for us to refine this particular chart. The purpose is to give you that framework for you guys to think about and carry forward into your own work. Okay? All right. So as you guys know, every good study, as I always say, every good study also ends with go forward steps, right? So as a closing exercise, let's come up with what are some of the go forward steps that we could be doing here, right? What are some of the other things we could be looking at here? So to me, something that pops to my mind to bring it back to the segmentation We've only looked at consumers. What about central banks? Did the Indian central bank act in the same way? What about other countries in the region? Right? Central banks keep an eye on each other, right? What did the Pakistani central bank do during this time? What did the Pakistani consumer do during this time? Right? So let me know in the chat. Give me your ideas, right? Like I told you guys, every good study, and I tell this to my juniors, the people who work for me. I tell them, if we're going to give a presentation, we're always going to walk in there and say, hey, this is where we're at, but if you give me more time, this is where I can get you to, right? Same exercise. So give me idea there. Give me ideas there. Yassine says, thank you, sir. I can't imagine anyone out there that would give such advice. Knowing when to stop is really a must-have. Yeah, absolutely. Yassine, this is one of those things where I can only give you guys that advice and that type of view because I've been out there. Like I've been in the real world. I've been a real world data scientist. These other idiot influencers they don't know because they literally haven't worked, right? They literally don't know any better. But yeah, I mean, I appreciate your sentiment there, but this is what happens in the real world. So like when I'm asking you guys, give me a rationale, and I push things back on you, your chief data scientist is going to do the same thing. This is what I do to my juniors, to my staff, right? And yeah, sometimes you come across data like this where it's skewed, it's not enough. The stakeholder thinks they can get one thing from it, but they really can't because they don't have other components. This happens. Steele says, find other data sources. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a couple years back, maybe a while now, there was a famous quote by one of the Google researchers that says, if you're looking in one data set, you're looking wrong, right? The true insights, the true answers are rarely in a single data set. Like you do the groundbreaking stuff when you bring in multiple data sets. Like that's where like the real insights come in. And I have that conversation with my corporate clients all the time, right? Because, a lot of them don't understand. A ton of data science teams don't understand that, right? But yeah, start bringing in more data, right? Like, last week we talked about interest rates. Today, I think it was Leo. Leo talked about, what did you talk about, Leo? You talked, was it you that brought up Bitcoin? Oh, the ETFs, right? Leo brought up ETFs. Somebody else brought up Bitcoin. Well, that's not in this data. So, but you can get Bitcoin data. You can get ETF data, right? So yeah, absolutely find other data sources. Voldemort says, and analyzing the Asian countries would be more interesting as a chart number 7 has something interesting. Yeah, absolutely it would, right? Or, the charts mention China. Maybe your study does a deep dive into China, right? According to that study, the Chinese consumer has been driving a lot of prices. Well, what does the Chinese chart look versus the India chart, right? That could be interesting too, right? Leo says, I brought it up the first time today, ETFs. Yeah, so go get ETF data and combine it with what you're seeing here. Very, very, very valuable to do that, right? And that gets a little bit more into like the advanced analytics of things, right? Where you can start making those connections. But that's also where you lead to more interesting studies, more interesting models, right? So what else? What else do you guys see? Abdul says, you mean adding another variable and do maybe multiple OLS? I'm sorry, OLS? Can you share that acronym? Yeah, OLS. Sorry, not sure I know that one. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could think of it as another variable, but it's really just more about seeing different pieces of data, right? The different relationships, different correlations, right? Like that's where I think it's valuable. Rex says OLS, ordinary least squares. Yeah, maybe that's what he means, but we'll let Abdul answer there. Yeah, we'll see what Abdul answers. But yeah, I mean, again, I really hope that you guys are it's coming across about the entire framework that you should be doing, the mindset that we should be bringing this. Leo says, Dennis, practical question. How long would it be acceptable to deliver this for my study if you're my boss waiting for my research? Yeah, good question, Leo. It depends on the complexity of the data. It depends on, you know, the number, the depth of the data, the width of the data. Personally, you know, as somebody who's working with a stakeholder to try to, you know, set those deadlines, I try to give us as much time as possible. Because also remember that one of the key things, you know, from me, like the boss's perspective, what I'm really looking for from this phase is ideas. What can we do with this data? Right? Because after EDA, you should be going into an ideation phase with your stakeholder, right? You're going to sit down, you're going to say, hey, this is what the data showed us. We think there's things that are interesting here. Maybe you think there's some other interesting things. How would you like us to proceed? Like that's the value that you're getting out of EDA, right? Because not only are you coming up with ideas, you're coming up with ideas that say, hey, here's our idea, and we're pretty sure we have enough data to work with to make this idea happen, right? So personally, Leo, I'm going to try to buy you as much time as possible from the stakeholder. So I'm probably like the most lenient, I guess you could say, during this stage, because I want you to have that time to like sit and play with the data. So I hope that answers your question. Ordinary least squares, Abdullah says, yes, that's what we mean. Maybe. I guess I was thrown off by the OLS because remember, this isn't a modeling stage, guys. This isn't modeling. This is all just exploring. This is all just getting a feel for the data, seeing where it's at, seeing if you have enough, generating ideas, you know, exploring. That's all it is. So yes, you might do some scatter plots, you know, to find other things, but you can get those correlations from line graphs, right? Like I wouldn't want somebody during EDA, you know, like somebody like one of my staff to come back with you know, like a regression model or something like that. That's too much at this stage, right? I just want to know what's possible. I mean, that's really kind of like the goal, right? So I don't want to say you're off the mark there, Abdul, but it's a little much, right? Like modeling and errors and, you know, fitting things, that's not really at play here, right? It's just more about bringing in other items that you think could be correlated. Or, you know, or some of you brought up like domain knowledge, right? Like some of you said, well, hey, 2016, I think it was 2016 or 2013, was a demonetization in India. Okay, well, great. Yeah, start bringing stuff like that in, right? Like, you know, it's good to make notes of those things, but like to actually start fitting and getting metrics, not yet. Not yet. We're a little early for that, right? Yassine says maybe we can look at monthly data and see what months contributed the most unusual spikes. Yeah, absolutely, Yassine. Yeah, that's what I was mentioning earlier, right? If we can get quarterly data, right, you would see that 2020 was really just the first 2 quarters. It wasn't the whole year, right? It was just the first 2 quarters. And more specifically was really like what, like March, April, May that were bad, right? So that's actually it's actually the end of Q1, right? So yeah, that would definitely smooth things out. So you're on the right track there, right? But again, you'd never know until you ask for more data. And sometimes maybe there isn't that data, right? Like I said, maybe the data doesn't exist, or maybe the DBA just got lazy and didn't pull it for you. You got to ask. These are those conversations you got to have with your stakeholders, right? So Steele says, how about we get the whole South Asian market data like Voldemort says? Maybe there could be a consistent behavior in the region or not. Yeah, sure. Sure. You could do the region. You could do like, country by country matchups. You could do a lot of things, right? Like for me, like I would want to compare to Thailand because I know that gold is popular for consumers in India, but I know it's also popular in Thailand. So how do those two consumer bases line up, right? So, a mini hypothesis would be that give me a second. So you could say that a mini hypothesis would be that your Thailand chart is going to look similar to this, right? Like, why wouldn't it? Let's find out, right? You can prove that. And if there is a difference, and say, okay, well, what's different about, the Thai consumer versus the Indian consumer, right? Like, yeah, that's interesting to do that, to look at those correlations. So I'm glad, I like where you're going with that, right? Because this is all of you in your minds working of where you can go next. But again, the purpose is not the gold market here. The purpose is take this framework and carry it forward into your own work, right? I'm trying to kind of keep us reined in here, right? So that we don't get too crazy with the gold data. The purpose is to, look at the greater framework, right? The meta view, as I like to say. Casual Economist says, OLS, we use that in econometrics. That's the only thing I understand today. What? That's not true. That's not true. You're a smart guy. You're smart. You know what we're talking about today. And plus, gold is universal, right? That's why I chose it. Everybody has some association or some feelings about gold, right? Like everybody does. So I mean, you understood today. You're playing possum over there. But good to see you there, Casual Economist. All right, guys. So any other closing thoughts before we close off here? But I think this has been a really great session. Again, I really hope that you're able to carry this forward into your own work. And also you can understand some of my rationale as far as the process. And when I ask all of you questions, when I give you pushback on some of these items. But I think it's been a great session. Toba Tech says, please use translation options should be started to understand your videos in other languages. Which languages? I'm open to that. Which languages would you guys like? Let me know. I do speak Spanish, and I have considered doing videos in Spanish, but that's really tiring. That's really tiring for me to think about data science and in Spanish. That's exhausting. Steele says, love the live stream, first time watching it and already a great time. Well, good. Keep on coming back. Keep on coming back. My whole goal here is just to give you guys the best real world information I can, and I really think that nobody else is doing that because they can't, because, they're just trying to sell you junk, right? And that's not me. But if you do want to support me, please check out my book on Amazon, Your First Year in Data Science. I don't sell cheap courses. I don't have a Patreon. Best way to support me, if you'd like, is to buy my book on Amazon. I appreciate that. But yeah, I'm just trying to put out the best content I can. And, if you do that, everything else will take care of itself, right? So Abdul says, thank you so much for this wonderful session. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Like I said, guys, keep on coming back. I'm trying to put out good content, and Abdul says, I've already bought the book. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, that book is kind of like part of my overall legacy, so I'm really proud of it. But I want to thank all of you because, you guys also make the stream great with the feedback and things like that. Really great questions today. So take this, carry it forward, not just for jobs, but to become a data professional, right? Because that's really what I'm trying to do here, right? I'm trying to create the next generation of data professionals. Lots of craziness happening in the world. So please take care of yourselves, take care of your families, and I'll see you guys next time.